Mm-hmm.
Good to go. Live.
Yo, what's good, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another Game of the Week preview. Of course, we got to break this game down. We got the New York Knicks on their West Coast trip facing the Sacramento Kings. And who better to join me than to break this game down is none other than my guy, James Ham. He covers the Sacramento Kings. You can go watch him over at ESPN, all right? Or not watch him over, listen to him on ESPN, I should say. Listen to him on ESPN covering the Kings. Got to make sure I correct my vernacular over there. Make sure to lock in. Make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to a $100 match. And make sure to share the links to all these videos and hit that and subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up button for your boys. James, how you doing, my man? How you feeling? It's been a minute. It's been about a year since I've spoken to you about the Kings.
Yeah, it's like once a year we get to reconvene and talk basketball. It's just kind of the nature of having a East Coast, West Coast teams that we cover. And yeah, everything's good out here. The Kings are playing better basketball, but they could not play better basketball in the blink of an eye, which is what they've done all season long.
Well, we're going to get into that in a second. But before I ask you how the Kings are doing, this is a Knicks channel. So I have to ask your thoughts and opinions on what you think about the New York Knicks this season.
Man, I love what they're doing. I love their build. The OG Anunoby transaction, just spectacular. He's a guy that I was calling for the Kings to get for the last couple of seasons. You got Josh Hart, who's one of the best rebounding small guys in the league. Again, a player that would have looked really, really good in a Sacramento Kings uniform. Jalen Brunson is one of the toughest guys to defend in the league. You guys are going to have a little bit of trouble with big boy Domantas Sabonis because you're a little weak at the center position. But this should be a really, really fun game between contrasting styles. I love the grit and the grind of that Knicks team and what Tom Thibodeau has been able to sort of piece together there.
You think Isaiah Hartenstein is weak? Really?
I don't think he's weak, but have you seen what Domantas Sabonis has been doing?
No, I mean, we've just been talking about this off stage. I fall asleep at 10. No, I'm just playing. I know Sabonis has been having an all-star caliber season. He should have been an all-star this year. He's been beasting over there for the Kings. Him and Fox are two guys that got snubbed from that all-star, just playing in the all-star game. So totally respect what those guys are doing. They're awesome. You even get Sabonis getting the moniker like Baby Jokic. I mean, we see if you're a big Pokemon fan, they have the evolution of like Alfred Sengun being Charmander, Sabonis being Charmeleon, and then you have Charizard being Nikola Jokic himself. So, we all understand what Sabonis can do. The man's a double-double machine.
Yeah, I mean, he's a full-on double-double machine. He's riding a streak right now of 48 consecutive double-doubles. He leads the NBA. I think he's at 62 double-doubles on the season.
Wow.
He's also leading the league with 23 triple-doubles. Yeah, he's like what he's doing, 20 points, 13 and a half rebounds, leading the NBA in rebounding, and then like 8.4 assists per night. It's been a triple-double almost, like from January 1st on. He's been averaging close to a triple-double, and he's just one of those hard hat guys that brings it every single game.
That's for sure, but I don't think he's gonna. He's been playing very well, but I think Isaiah Hartenstein is gonna step up to the challenge and make sure to put a body on Sabonis and give it his best. To just recap what you said. Like, I like what the Knicks are doing. Obviously, as a Knicks fan, I think they've been doing a solid job. Just we've been unfortunate with all the injuries that we've had this season with Julius Randle going down, Mitchell Robinson. We had to miss OG Anunoby for a bit. He's back now, so. 2 games. Yesterday, he was giving us a big scare against Portland where, he was just yelping every single time he was going into the paint or defending somebody. So we're just hoping that he can play, or not necessarily play, but he said he's going to play tomorrow. But hopefully that there's no setbacks or anything of that nature with this injury. So Knicks, hopefully this with OG back, it's just good things to come with maybe Randall being the next guy. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we're still unsure what his timetable is. Maybe Mitchell Robinson, because we're all looking for playoffs and what the Knicks were doing when they're on that winning streak in January. We want to be able to see that come postseason.
Yeah, they're super talented. They've got a bunch of matchup problems. Like some of their guys just like not very many teams can not only match like the length and athleticism, but the physicality. And it's something that I think that they kind of they chase that type of player. They look for like massive amounts of physicality, even like Precious Achua. And, for as much as Bojan Bogdanovic is like your standard European scorer, the way he does it is still with physicality. He's really tough to defend when he gets going. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I like the way that they've built that team. And but I think it is like two different styles of play, and whether you can keep up with what the Kings are doing, or the shooting of the Kings when they get rolling, the offense
Hmm.
when it's cruising or not. I think it will come down to like who's able to enforce their will on the game and who isn't. And last time these guys played in Sacramento, the Kings came away with a win, but the Knicks had 23 offensive rebounds and just battered the Kings on the offensive glass. And it's something that Mike Brown in his post game press conference, he wasn't happy at all and just called his team out. And of course, the reason why he did that is because that exact same thing that the Knicks did is something that you saw the Golden State Warriors copy in the playoffs with Kevon Looney. And they hurt the Kings doing the exact same thing, the offensive rebound, spray three, open look three. So yeah, definitely. Like again, the contrasting style is huge. It stands out, and it's going to be just who's better at their game when these two
Absolutely.
teams clash.
Absolutely. I agree with that with 100%. But let's talk about the Kings for a little bit before we break down like how these two teams are so different stylistically. What has been your thought about the Kings season overall?
Yeah, it's tough. Every time they take a couple of steps forward, they take one step back,
Mm,
and I think more than anything else, their identity this season has been a team that plays to the level of competition. And you can look around the league and look at their records. What are they? They're 3-1 against Denver. They're 2-1 against Minnesota. They're 2-1 against OKC. Like almost every single team around them in the playoffs, they're 4-0 against the Lakers. They're 2-2 against Golden State. They're 2-0 on the season against Dallas. They're, I think, 2-2 against the Suns. Like they beat really, really good teams, but then the bad losses are what are just so jarring. So they're 0-3 against Houston. They lost once to the Detroit Pistons at home. They lost to the
mm,
Charlotte Hornets at home. They've lost to like the Blazers. Like there are moments where this team lets off the gas or doesn't show up in a game that are just kind of jarring, and it's caused sort of this weird feel to the entire season where they're right on pace to where they were last year to win 48 games. I think I checked yesterday and they are literally pacing for exactly 48 wins,
mm.
but they haven't been great at home. I think they're 18-11 at home. They haven't been great on the defensive end. And this whole, not showing up when you're playing against a team that isn't very good is a huge issue. Although the Knicks are a good team, the Kings know that, and I would expect the Kings to show up and it'll be a good game.
Now, do you think that the up and down nature of this team is maybe, I don't know, like maybe some new additions, or is it just because they're just comfortable with what they are? They just know talent. They know the talent level that they have, and they're ready to just like coast during the regular season and turn on for the playoffs. Why are the Kings really up and down?
Yeah, I would like to tell you it's because they're coasting for the playoffs. Because I mean, they're as of right now they're the 6th seed, but they're a half game or a game up on Dallas for the 7, which is
Hmm.
of course a play-in spot, not a postseason spot. I think a little bit of it is growing pains, right?
Mm,
Mike Brown has been really pushing and pushing for them to become a better defensive team. He loved the offense. It was the highest rated offense in the history of the NBA last year. Since the All-Star break, that offense is back. We're seeing them climb the offensive rating charts like nonstop. They're all the way up to number 8 in the league after sitting around 14th, 15th for a good part of the season. I think they're third or fourth in offensive rating since the break. But for whatever reason, this team has really struggled to embrace like success. Their longest
mm,
win streaks, they had a nice win streak early in the season, but for the most part, it's been 2, 3 games and then lose a tough one. 2, 3 games, lose a tough one, lose 2 in a row. They don't typically lose more than 3 in a row, which has been sort of the resiliency of this team. But at the same time, there is no like feel good moment that carries on. Like capturing momentum and using momentum has been an issue for them.
hmm.
And I would say like covering them of all my years, covering them when you knew they were just bad. I mean, 14, my first 14, well, my first 12 years of my 14, I was 250 games under 500 as a beat writer. And
Woof.
so you knew exactly what you're getting on most nights. You're getting a bad basketball team that every once in a while could jump up and snake bite somebody. 30 win teams. This is only in my 14th season. The Kings are 38 wins. I've only seen 38 wins 3 times. And one of them was last year, and one of them was when Dave Yeager won 39 wins.
Mm.
Outside of that 33 capped out at George Karl's year, that's the best I'd seen. And so this is unfamiliar ground for a lot of these players. And not only just to get to the playoffs was unfamiliar, but then to try to repeat the next season and try to be that team the next year, it's not as easy as just like, hey, we did it last year, we're in. It's no, you're not just in some exclusive club. You have to earn your way back into that club every year. I think a lot of teams around the league are taking the Kings a little more seriously.
Hmm.
That's for starters. They're not benching players against the Kings. So I think in the past, what you see is, you go up against a Clippers team and Kawhi Leonard's going to sit out. You go up against a Bucks team. One time you see Giannis, but one time you don't during the season. You might see Embiid once during the year, but not twice. And this season, you're getting everybody's best. And the Kings haven't always responded well to that. Although against the high end teams, they've been really strong.
Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another Game of the Week preview. With me on the other side is my guy, James Ham. He covers the Kings for ESPN 1320. He's the co-host of the Insiders. He also covers the Sacramento Kings for the kingsbeat.com. So make sure to check out his work there. Hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV. Get up to a $100 match. James, so you talk about how, the Kings haven't really responded well to now everyone giving their best, right? Guys aren't taking nights off against the Kings, and rightfully so. This team, especially offensively, is quite potent. But you talked about defensive woes for this team, right? And why is this team 2 years in a row now struggling defensively?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it starts with just personnel. Like if you look at their team, it's basically their solid rotation pieces of 7 guys in the rotation are all known for their offense. Whether it's Fox, whether it's Herter, Keegan Murray's come along incredibly well as a defender in his second season. But Harrison Barnes, Sabonis Sabonis, Trey Lyles, Malik Monk, they are offensive weapons. And you look at your Knicks squad comparatively. OG Anunoby has built his entire career being a defender, and same thing with guys like Josh Hart. You just have even Dante DiVincenzo is a very, very good defender. And the Kings just don't have like what you would point to as like an elite defender. I'd also say they don't have length and athleticism. So, when you come into a season and your forward rotation is again Keegan Murray and Harrison Barnes, but Trey Lyles and Sasha Vazenkov, like no one has a 7'3" wingspan. No one can jump out of the gym. When you go up against a Brandon Ingram or, name that long, athletic, small forward in the league, which everyone else seems to have, the Kings just can't hang with them. And so that's been a problem. They've done a better job in the second half. And again, the development of Keegan Murray as a defender is jarring. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a player go into an offseason, come back in his second NBA season and say, yeah, I'm way more athletic than I was last year. And that's what we've seen from Keegan. I think he's taken a huge stride. You can look at like ISO numbers. In ISO, he's I think the top defender in the league in isolation situations.
Hmm.
So he's really, really taken a huge step. And De'Aaron Fox has taken a leap too. He's second, third in the league in steals.
Swiper.
He's a lot more engaged on the defensive end, and so between those two, that's great. But then you have some limitations, and the biggest problem that the Kings have is they don't defend the three at all. So, like for up until the last couple of games, they're allowing opponents to shoot just about 40% from three on the season. And
Wow.
that's just like shocking. Like, how in the world are you allowing 39.8% from three? And it doesn't matter who it is. The worst 3-point shooting teams come in and knock down like 13 of 26 from three against the Kings. And so their closeouts, they've worked really hard on that in the second half here. I don't know if you can really improve that all that much with just the personnel you have, but that's why they're bad defensively. I don't think it's that that they're trying to be bad or they're just doing run and gun stuff. They just don't have the personnel, number one. They don't have the length and athleticism, number two. And then they just, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when everyone in the league knows you're a bad 3-point defensive team. They start launching on you and they feel really comfortable, whether it's in your own gym or their gym. It doesn't really matter.
So what you're telling me, James, is that I need to take the over on any 3-pointer for any sports bet that I put down, right? Now, so for everybody out there, for Underdog, if you see somebody on the Knicks squad with a 3-point, choose higher. That's what we're telling. That's what James
Yeah,
is telling
see,
us.
I live in California, so I can't tell you what to bet.
Mm.
But if you're doing if you're playing online fantasy sports, I would go more on any of your 3-point shooting. Yeah, you've got to. We can say more. We can't say we can't talk about.
I hear what
Well,
you're
yeah,
saying. I get what you're saying. I get what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So then I think another question defensively is, there's always the conversation about can the Kings do it with Domantas Sabonis at the 5 because he's a little undersized playing the 5 position. What is your take on that?
Yeah. Okay. So look, every NBA player has a flaw. There is no perfect player in the league. There just isn't, and I don't know that there ever has been. Outside of maybe Michael Jordan, and I don't even know if that we can say that. Like, could Michael Jordan hit the three in the modern NBA like he did? Like only a couple of times per game. Um, I'm okay with everything that Domantas Sabonis does. For me, if you have a guy who again is averaging 20, 13 and a half, and 8.5, and he can't block shots, then maybe you should just go get a shot blocker to put alongside him. Like the solution isn't to make Sabonis into something that he's not. The solution is to support him in the right way. And until the Kings do that, they're still going to have a little bit of problems. Sabonis is not a bad defender. He's not horrible in space, and he's one of the strongest dudes you're going to run into. He gets shot over on occasion, and he picks up cheap fouls, but his fouls are usually trying to defend somebody that got loose from somebody else. It's usually as a help defender that he goes in and gets called for, not going vertical and fouling somebody. So for me, I think you can be a great defensive team with Sabonis as your center. You just have to have really, really strong defenders around him. Again, it's
Mm.
it's about the length and athleticism. Like Harrison Barnes is still a really high quality player, but the fact that he isn't an elite defender and that he can't slow down, everybody from getting to the key, or he can't block a shot at all. He's not a natural shot blocker. That doesn't help Sabonis. And you could say the same about Kevin Huerter. You can say, Keegan Murray is growing as a player, and so he might be one of the solutions there. But I think the next iteration of the Kings is going to be true 3-and-D, long athletic players at the 3 and at the 2 and the 3, and to play alongside Keegan Murray and Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, because you can see sort of like the next step, what they have to do in order to get better defensively. And it's great that you bring in players that, are 10, 11, 12 man in your rotation that play defense. But if you don't get on the court, it's not like you're helping the defense by osmosis or something. So we're seeing a little bit right now. There's a possibility that Keon Ellis will start. And Keon Ellis is long and super athletic, like a 6'5". Like, I don't know. He plays the 1 and the 2, and not a
Hmm.
lot of people know who he is. He went undrafted out of Alabama, not this season, but last season. And he worked his way into the league as a two-way, and the Kings locked him up to a regular contract at the midway point of this season. He's 6-0 as a starter, and so that's something to look out for. His defense over the last couple of games on Damian Lillard and on D'Angelo Russell was just next level. Look at their stats. He held them to nothing, and really, really stunning how good of a defender he is. Mike Brown has compared him, not really as a player, but as the way he fights through screens and the way he closes out, to Bruce Bowen. And you'll see it. Like, he fights through a screen about as well as any player I've ever seen. And then he can go under a screen and still close out on a three because he's that quick. So, like, those are the types of players that you might see tomorrow facing off with, with Brunson. And that's, whether they can limit Brunson or not, who knows? He's just a different beast. And especially when you haven't played against Brunson, But yeah,
Mhm.
I would say that's why the Kings defense is porous. It's bad because they kind of have bad defensive players.
And this is funny considering that Mike Brown is, a defensive minded coach. So let's talk about Mike Brown for a bit, right?
Mhm.
How's Mike Brown been as a coach this season?
Okay, so last season I'd never like covering the team as long as I have. I've never been to so many practices. Like the Kings practiced every single day. They would get off a plane and practice this same day on road trips. So they would fly, get off the plane, go straight to a gym and practice. On home, they'd get done with a 6 game road trip and we'd have practice the next day. This year it's been a little different, and I think that's part of it being year two. Part of the guys already knowing the system and not having to start from like the beginning with them. But I think this has been a difficult season because, whether like whatever the disconnect has been, this team again not being able to embrace success and just having this like straight climb to 55 wins or something. I think it's been frustrating for everybody. And then for them to not really make any noticeable change in the offseason, they brought in Chris Duarte that hasn't really worked out all that well.
Mm.
They brought in Sasha Vezenkov, who really hadn't worked out all that well, and then he got injured and I don't even know when he'll play, if he will play at all the rest of the season because of a grade 3 ankle sprain. And that's kind of all they really brought in during the offset. JaVale McGee, and he's out of the rotation. So Mike hasn't really been able to get like the type of player, when the Kings chased a Pascal Siakam or chased an OG Anunoby, those guys made sense for the roster, but they didn't happen. And on top of that, a lot of your players' names got mentioned in those trades, and so that became a bit of an issue around the team. So I would say that he's done a really good job of keeping the team focused and keeping them on the same track, keeping the noise to a minimum. But it's also been a frustrating season for everybody involved. And I know he's a defensive minded coach, but he also like he knows that he has an offensive team and he's embraced that. And it's not always easy to try to get a team. He always compares it to like if you have a kid and they got an A in math and like a D or an F in science, you don't just like forget about science and say, oh, we're just going to do math from here on out. You got to work on science as well and try to balance them out a little bit. And that's how he compares the offense and the defensive side. And so he's doing his best to get this team up to speed. But I think the other thing he'll point to is that when this team was in the playoffs last year against Golden State, they were phenomenal defensively.
Mm.
And in a 7 game series, they might be able to turn it up. He's just been trying to turn it up all season long and kind of running into a buzzsaw with his team where, some nights they aren't there.
And with the, after it was great, right? You have the Kings make the playoffs last year. Of course, it doesn't end the way they wanted to, losing to the Warriors in 7 games. They're probably going to make the playoffs again this year, whether that be via play-in or just being outright being in the top six. As you mentioned, they're number 6 right now. What is your expectation for this team in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, it's a good question because they're starting to come around right now. And last year, I think, I had a hard time believing what I was seeing last year just because, I've covered the team so long and I've seen teams get to not the midway point, but to mid January where they're playing really, really well. And you thought that they're on the right path. And then, the wheels fall off. What they did in the second half was stunning. They were excellent in the second half of the season. And, outside of the final 3 games where they just kind of like set themselves up for the playoffs, they were one of the best teams in basketball. And that's when you started to buy into who this team was. This team right now, I still have to see it. I still have to, they've got plenty of games here to prove that they can kind of get on the right path. They still have a shot at 48 wins. They've got a shot at 50 if they play really well. But they also have to prove again that they can be a team on the rise. And you get to a playoff series, they've got a little bit more experience. Not only in the playoffs, but there's something strange which Knicks fans probably don't understand, but the Kings are never on TV. They're never on national TV. So they have their
Mm.
own games, right? That are on NBC Sports Bay Area or California here in Sacramento. And that's great. But when you get on TNT and when you get on NBA TV and you get on ESPN, all the timeouts are different. The whole feel of the game is different. Sometimes the game doesn't even start on time. Sometimes it can start 15 minutes late.
Yep.
And there's an anxiety to that as a young player who's never been through that before. And you can watch like the teams that haven't been there before, their players are out milling around on the court and burning like energy, just excited energy. And you look over at a team like the Golden State Warriors, and they might as well have a cocktail in their hands. They're just hanging out, waiting for the game to start because they know that this is a drill. So this season, the Kings have 22 nationally televised games, which is
Wow.
totally new to them. Last year, I think they had one or two.
Woo.
This year, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at between TNT. I think they had 11 TNT or 10 TNT, and then like half it's split with ESPN and NBA TV. So
Hmm.
they have a lot more practice on what the playoffs feel like because that's what the playoffs are. They're a nationally televised game. And so the breaks are longer. Everything is longer and it's slower. And, there's more buzz to it, but it's way slower. So I think they'll be better prepared there. And I would also make the case like, look, this team, the only reason they lost, well, there's two reasons they lost. They had a three rim out in game four that would have ended the like put the Warriors like down 3-1, right? With a couple of home games up in Sacramento. That's one thing. But then De'Aaron Fox broke the tip of his index finger on his dominant hand on his left hand, and he just wasn't the same player in the last three games. He couldn't dribble the ball the same way, and they still took the Warriors to 7 and barely lost. And so that's what I would point. I think that this team can make the second round of the playoffs, especially against teams that are above them that maybe don't have the same experience, even the 1 year. So a team like OKC, which the Kings have played really well against OKC, or a team like Minnesota, who, right now is trying to adjust to life without Cat and what that means for their team and not having that second like elite scorer to go with the rest of the group. Um, like if you're going to play one of those teams, I think the Kings can beat them. They're also 3-1 against Denver. They're 2-2. Well, I think they're 1-2 against the Clippers, but I think we all are looking at the Clippers as like either the most dangerous team or a team that will have 3 injuries in the last week of the season and will disappear again. And so like you either fear them like oh my gosh, they're so good, or oh my gosh, like what happened? Well, we know what happened. They got old and they all got hurt again. So like I think there is a way for the Kings to make the second round of the playoffs, and then all bets are off. Once you get there, who knows what will happen?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to know, as if someone who's covered the Kings for so long, do you want the Lakers or do you want the Warriors?
Like in a plan
I mean,
or
I
to
mean,
make the
play in
playoffs?
playoffs in the whatever.
Oh, I would prefer neither one of those make it. But like if I'm the Kings, like the Kings to play those guys, it's almost impossible for them to outside of a play-in. I don't want any part of the Lakers or the Warriors in a play-in series. Like we can all like skirt around the elephant in the room, but if the Sacramento Kings believe they're going to get a fair shake by NBA officials in a one-game playoff against LeBron James or Steph Curry, they're wrong. That we all know they're wrong, and you are going to flat out have to beat that team by 12 or 15 points. There's going to be no question coming down the wire as to what's going to like. You have to beat those teams. Where I think again, if you had a one-game play-in against the Dallas Mavericks, okay, you beat up on the Dallas Mavericks the last couple of years. You're 2-0 against them this year with 2 games left. That's not a team that you fear as much. And sure, Luka gets calls as well, but not at this in the same way that you'll get calls from for LeBron or for Steph. So if I'm the Kings, I avoid the playoff at all cost. And the last thing I want to do is play one of those teams, or heaven forbid, both of those teams, because that could be the case. If you're the 7, somehow you have to play one of them as an 8 seed, and then
Hmm.
as you have to play the 9-10, and one of those guys is in there from the 9-10, you could easily lose 2 play-in games and be bounced. And so the key to everything in Sacramento is to avoid the play-in series, so you don't have to worry about those 2 teams down there.
Shout out to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another Game of the Week preview. With me on the other side is my guy, James Ham. He covers the Sacramento Kings for ESPN. 1320, as well as the kingsbeat.com. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to a $100 match. And look, let's talk about our sponsor for a bit, because when I'm watching these games, I like to make it interesting. I like to put some money down. I like to get a little more engaged. I like to choose the players. I like to think that I know more than possible to get the money back in return. That's absolutely wrong, but hey, it's still fun anyway, right? And that's why we do this. And look, if you love put money down on any game, the good thing about Underdog Fantasy is that they promote all leagues, whether it be NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, soccer, golf, whatever it may be, whatever you're into, you can put some money down on any of those sports. And when you go to the app and you choose the fantasy side, all you got to do is just choose higher or lower based on the statistical projection that they have. So, for example, let's see what I did here tonight, right? Let me just pull up my sheet and I can tell you guys where I went. So for one, I chose Nikola Jokic to get higher than 42 and a half points, rebounds, and assists. Now they're playing the San Antonio Spurs tonight. There is a chance that that could be a blowout, but the way that Victor Wembanyama's been playing, I feel like that maybe for a little bit, it could be a little competitive. And I still think Jokic, being the guy who's always controlling the rock, he could be that guy that still get the points, even if it is a blowout win for the Nuggets. I then chose Pascal Siakam to go higher than 20 and a half points. The Indiana Pacers are playing the Brooklyn Nets. Sometimes you may get a feisty Brooklyn team, so Siakam may be needed, especially with how Halliburton just likes to facilitate. So I'm looking for Siakam to do some damage over there. And I chose higher on Miles Bridges getting higher for 21 and a half points for Miles Bridges. They're playing the Phoenix Suns. He should be turned up tonight, going against Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. You need somebody to score the rock to make sure this is a competitive game, and Miles Bridges is that guy they're going to be looking toward. So that's my sheet for tonight, right? And then for any other sport, it could be any statistical category, combination, single, of thereof. And then what we've been doing for Team KFTV is doing the draft component. All right. CP, JD, CK, and myself, we've been competing in these drafts. So you can choose for basketball specifically, you can choose these. There's no, was it? It's I forget what's the term. It's these there's no categories, right? It's you have essentially you don't have to fill positions. Positionless. It's positionless basketball. Let's just call it that. You can choose positionless basketball, choose 6 players, whoever you want, however you want to fill the roster, and then you'll get the fantasy point total at the end. And then you know what? Between all of us, winner gets some lunch money for the next day, or get some drink money. It's been good time. It's been good times. I won the most pot last time. CP just won a tiny little pot. Okay, CP, you got to ante it up a little bit more. But hey, make sure to download the app Underdog Fantasy or go to the web browser, whatever fits your fancy. Use that promo code KFTV and you to get that match of up to $100 on your first deposit. All right. So moving this show along, there's a matchup. We got the storylines from James about how the Kings are doing this season, outlook, what he expects from them in the playoffs. But James, we got to talk about this matchup, man. You talked about at the beginning. This is two stylistically different teams. You got the Sacramento Kings. They're a juggernaut offense, in my opinion. I know they're in the top 10 right now when it comes to points per game. Knicks, they were at one point, obviously losing Julius Randle, losing a scoring hub, changes everything. Right now, since Julius Randle's injury, the Knicks are 19th in offensive rating, but defensively, they still stayed in the top 10. And so that's where they made their bread and butter. Not shocking because this is a Tom Thibodeau-led team. So this is where I'm looking at for where rubber meets the road. Is it going to be defense that wins the day, or is it going to be the offense of the Sacramento Kings? And that's the matchup that I'm looking at so far. What are your thoughts on this matchup for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's a absolutely spectacular matchup. It should be a grinder of a game. And really, like, if you want to know, like, truly the difference in players and the difference in contrast, just look at the small forward position where you have a 6'4" Josh Hart who's averaging 8 rebounds per game against a 6'8" Harrison Barnes who's averaging 2.8 rebounds per game. That's, to me, it speaks volumes about who the Kings are and who the Knicks are. The Sabonis, he's gonna eat. He's gonna against big, long shot blocking centers. He pushes them right underneath the basket and he scores at will. He's one of the best passers you're going to see. And as far as a rebounder, he's going to dominate as well. The Kings are the #1 defensive rebounding percentage team in the league, which is something that you would be surprised to see, especially after what happened last time these two teams played. and the Knicks grabbed 23 offensive rebounds. So I'd watch for that stat as well. The Kings have a lot of looks to throw at your point guard, which I think is really good. Whether it's De'Aaron Fox, Davion Mitchell coming off the bench, who told me early on in his career that the toughest guy in the league to guard is Brunson without
Mm.
any question. For him as like a 6 foot tall point guard, he said he's just so strong and so shifty. And then again, don't forget this Keon Ellis kid. He'll get some minutes on Brunson as well. I think that's going to be a good matchup. And then I think sort of I don't know, the quiet, sneaky play that you need to watch out for in this game. Dante DiVincenzo did not leave the Sacramento Kings on good terms. And the
Mm.
way that he walked away and the way that they pulled his qualifying offer, and he thought he was going to be in Sacramento. He got traded to the team. He thought he was going to start, and they wouldn't let him start and instead put Justin Holiday in as a starter over him, who came over in the Sabonis deal from Indiana. That didn't sit well with Dante DiVincenzo. And he's a tough matchup. You know, he's a jack of all trades. He's been shooting the ball so incredibly well from three. What he's averaging 8 attempts per game, but something like 12 over
Hmm.
since mid January or something. That's going to be a really really interesting matchup. I want to see who starts on him again. If Keon Ellis starts, Ellis will defend Brunson, and you'll get Fox on Dante DiVincenzo. Again, that's going to be a great matchup. They're both super athletic. They're both fun. That's so. I think that's a really cool matchup to watch as well. OG and Keegan Murray. eh, to be honest, is kind of boring. They're both really good at what they do, but they're neither one of them are saucy players. They're just really strong defenders, and I think it'll be interesting to see if opposing coaches use OG on Fox and Keegan Murray on Brunson, because I think you'll see that during the game where they try to get those switches and see if their best defenders can slow down the best offensive player on the opposite team. Outside of that, man, you're gonna watch Sabonis and you're gonna be like, how in the world did this guy not make an all-star team? That's what you're gonna when you get done watching it, you're gonna be like, how in the world did that happen? And we'll see.
Yeah, Sabonis is just he's the hub of that offense. You know, between him and Fox, like the thing about Sabonis that's so intriguing, or not necessarily intriguing, but so amazing, I'll say. I'll use amazing, is that his passing, right? He's a double-double machine when it comes to rebounds and scoring, but that passing, being a big man that can work the high post and just find guys who are cutting left and right, and that's really where the Kings, like, you guys have constant motion. And that's what I think for tomorrow's game, like from a big picture standpoint, that's my biggest concern from the Knicks, because you guys never stop moving. Like, and with somebody like Fox too, who's just a blur on the court, if you're going to have him working with Sabonis, if you're going to have, Hurd, who's just constantly moving around, weaving in and out to look for an open spot on the behind the 3 point line, like those type of guys are just going to be a pain. And then Harrison Barnes he's a solid cutter as well as Murray. Like it's just there's just so much going on with that Kings offense that defensively, I'm wondering, like, how do the Knicks prepare for something like that? Because it's never going to be, it's nonstop. And watching a team like the Indiana Pacers this season, who's probably that on steroids, like that team, granted, the Knicks have never been fully healthy when playing the Pacers. That team still, even with the Knicks team, who's top 10 defensively, has still been able to put up 100 points every time we face them. So if that's what the Pacers can do, and the Kings are, last year they were that top offense. Pacers just took it to another level. They're like the tier right below when I think offensively. So I'm wondering, like, how will the Knicks be ready to combat that? Because we haven't done that very well against the Pacers this season.
Yeah, I would say too, there's a lot more substance to the Kings offense than even the Pacers. Like the Pacers, they're going to pick and roll you to death. The Kings are more versatile, and that's because they're number one. They're in year two of that offense, and the Pacers have made changes like nonstop. Like the Pacers are a lot of fun to watch. They don't play any defense. The Kings aren't that bad defensively, not like the Pacers bad. But I think I'll also point out the one thing that we haven't mentioned is you're going to get to see Malik Monk, who is right
For
now
sure.
like easily the sixth man of the year. It's not even a competition. What he's doing on the court is crazy, and he adds a different element. And so you don't just have De'Aaron Fox, you literally have dueling banjos at some point where you're talking about this offense. It's like it just comes at you in waves and from different angles. And Malik Monk in the pick and roll is one of the most beautiful things you're going to get to see. Him and Sabonis in the two-man game is crazy. So you're going to see a lot of DHOs, the dribble handoffs from Sabonis at the top of the key, where he sets a screen and frees up Keegan Murray or Harrison Barnes, or like what you talked about, a running Kevin Huerter for wide open threes on the perimeter. But then these two electric guards just come at you nonstop, and then they play together, and then they start lobbing the ball to each other because they're college backcourt mates from Kentucky.
Right.
Yeah, like the chemistry is there, everything is there. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up just again, Malik Monk he's going to be a free agent this summer. He is having one of the most tremendous seasons for a six man that you're going to find.
And that's where, for me, I'm thinking about Deuce McBride. Is Deuce McBride ready defensively to keep up with Malik Monk? Because that's going to be that matchup. Monk's going to come off the bench. So is McBride. McBride is not the sixth guy. That would be, well, I guess in this sense, yes, he is the sixth guy for right now. It would be Josh Hart if this team was fully healthy. But for tomorrow, it will be Deuce McBride coming off the bench. Is he ready to guard Malik Monk? I think that's going to be interesting because Deuce McBride, Monk known for his scoring, McBride known for his defense, and just keep the whole theme is constantly defense versus offense for tomorrow. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun for that matchup. I'm looking forward to see how McBride, because the thing with McBride too is that he has improved offensively, like knocking down threes. He's taking that step forward. He's getting more comfortable driving into the paint. He's getting more comfortable just operating an offense as a backup guard, which is great to see considering that his first 2 years in the league, it's defense. It was defense and nothing else. Now there's more substance to it. And it's gotten to the point where Tom Thibodeau trusts him enough where when Brunson went down against the Cleveland Cavaliers, McBride plays 47 minutes. So Tibbs trusts him enough over Alec Burks and everybody, any other guard on that bench to say, you know what, we're going to trust you to have some play some big minutes over here. And so for Monk, because you're going to have Fox out there who's going to be another scoring hub. You got Sabonis out there who could just, who's the hub just to help create all that offense for the Kings. Monk is going to be Fox and Monk, I should say. Monk is going to be that guy that I'm wondering off the bench, how does Deuce maintain him?
Yeah, I totally agree. And then again, you guys got this secret weapon is Bojan Bogdanovic. He just crushes the Kings.
I
He
hope
just
so
like,
because he's been up and down since he's been in New York Knick.
yeah,
He's averaged 20 points, but then defensively he's just a turnstile. So that's
yes.
where that's the biggest issue. I know he's been an impactful player throughout most of his career. He's been a starter for most of his time in the league when he was on Utah. And I'm pretty sure he went in Indiana too. So like I know he's a good player, but what we've seen so far, and maybe it's just the stench of Detroit right now. Maybe it's just the stench of Detroit where, even Alec Burks, who had a good 2 first years on the Knicks, has just looked awful in his return. So hopefully Bogey looks good tomorrow against the Kings.
Yeah, you don't ever, ever, ever want to look at Alec Burks' stats as a member of the Sacramento Kings because people forget he was even here. And it's tough to forget if you were here and watching it because it was not good.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. One of the worst stints just for, I don't know. He came over at the All-Star break and forgot how to play basketball for a couple of months.
woo.
And yeah, like really tough because I know he's a good ball player. He's killed the Kings a couple of times since then. But whatever the situation was, so maybe it's just that mid-season acquisition. Alec Burks struggles.
Maybe. Who knows? We'll have to
Yeah.
see. I want to see who's going to do that case study. That'll be interesting. But, we could talk about all these different varying matchups for tomorrow, but there's only one to me, James, that really catches my eye, and that is Jalen Brunson versus De'Aaron Fox, two guards, both awesome in their own right, right? Fox being a facilitator, being just electric when you watch him offensively, just how he uses his speed and can go from 0 to 100 in a matter of just milliseconds is just phenomenal. And watching him and just being that guy for the Kings is just such uh, it's just fun to watch, man. He's just so much fun to watch because, especially now that he's shooting the three ball well, it's just that's opened his game up even more because now they have to guard him far out. that just gives him an open lane downhill, especially when you work with Sabonis and everybody else on that team who could shoot too. And then for Brunson, we're talking about a guy who's just footwork. You already talked about Davion Mitchell said one of the toughest guys to guard. Strength, footwork, craftiness, knowing how to lull guys into what he wants to do. It's gonna be a fun matchup. I know these guys. Brunson won't be guarding Fox tomorrow. Fox may be guarding Brunson for some stints. I'm wondering how these guys will just elevate their teams to be the victor on either side.
Yeah, I think that's the matchup of the game. I don't think there's another one that's even close. I think it will decide this game completely. And like, look, the Kings have a lot of weapons, but they also have nights where they don't shoot the ball well, to where they don't show up at home. And so you're wondering which Kings team will show up. If Fox shows up with the right energy, the Kings usually show up with the right energy. And it's going to be like the focal point of this entire game. They both could have great scoring nights. We could see just a shootout, but it really doesn't feel like what this one is going to be. It's going to be whoever enforces their will on the other. And, whichever play style wins out, I think will win. And so if this is a low scoring game, I think the Kings are going to have trouble. If it's a high scoring game, I don't know that the Knicks can fully keep up unless they just have a bunch of guys go crazy that are unexpected. The other thing I'll just keep pointing out, the Kings from behind the arc, whatever it is, the sidelines at Golden One Center, whatever it is, teams come in, they shoot the lights out. And so even teams that aren't great from behind the arc, they are when they play the Kings. And so if the Knicks get hot, that's always the other ingredient that could change everything, because it doesn't matter who it is. It's come through. Again, Charlotte, like, worst in the league. Detroit, worst in the league when they come through Sacramento. Whoever was worst in the league, they come through Sacramento, and then they're no longer the worst in the league, and they get right in Sacramento from behind the arc. And it becomes this weird self-fulfilling thing. So yeah, watch for that. Watch for that as well. The 3-point shot.
The Knicks at one point this season too were a top 10 3-point shooting team. Then injuries happened and they took a step
Trades.
back. Trades,
Yeah.
injuries, team took a step back, especially when you lose Julius Randle, and now your perimeter is not necessarily as open as it once was because you don't have to double team somebody who's not in the paint. So that's changed for the Knicks. But hey, if you're telling me that a different beam can be lit in this arena, then by all means, I like it. Hopefully, the Knicks will light that 3-point beam for tomorrow. But you know what's another key thing for me? I'm looking at these stats, and when I see points in the paint, Kings number 7 right now when it comes to points in the paint. That's going to be an interesting battle for the Knicks because they're number 4 when it comes to defending points in the paint. So I wonder if the Kings are going to be able to make sure that they can enforce their will. It's something that they're so accustomed to doing this season.
Yeah, there was a couple of games in a row where the Kings put up, I think, 76 and 71 points in the paint in back-to-back games. When Fox decides to go to the rim, there's really no stopping him. And if the Knicks are really good at defending that, that's okay. But the Kings love the paint touch and the spray 3. So they love for Fox to get to the paint or Monk to get to the paint and then find the shooters on the perimeter. So even if you are good at limiting points in the paint, that doesn't mean that that's going to help you, because if the Kings get hot from the perimeter, they're going to light you up. They have shooters everywhere. And so again, I think that that's a really good point, it's a team that limits points in the paint, but also you're going to see Sabonis go to work on Hartenstein, and it's going to be tough. Like it really does depend if he holds his ground. And what do you have? Precious Achua, right? Like he's got
Yep.
an opportunity because he's a big, strong guy to at least score a little bit. He's active. He's an active body, and he's done some good work against the Kings in the past. But still, Sabonis, when he gets somebody, when he's backing someone down, there's almost nothing you can do unless you're a really, really big, strong guy who can hold your ground. Not the shot blocker guys. Those guys he just throws under the basket. You can go ask Anthony Davis and his 0-10 record against Domas. But the same thing goes for Victor Wembanyama. Same thing goes for Rudy Gobert. Like those guys, they don't hurt Sabonis at all. It's the Steven Adams, the Kevon Looney's, those big, powerful, ground-based centers that hold him in check. And so Hartenstein can do that, then he's got a shot to slow him down. If not, man, he's really, really tough.
I'll say this thing about Hartenstein because last year when he started off defensively, he was a liability to some degree. Like he always seemed to step slow, but then he picked it up at the after the second half of last season. This season, he's been when fully healthy because he's dealing with an Achilles injury. He's been gangbuster. He's been awesome. He's been able to hold his own against any center in the league for the most part, and he's filling in for Mitchell Robinson, who's honestly playing at a defensive, all defensive team level this year, NBA defensive team level this year. After he went down, Hartenstein's just stepped in and has played very admirably. I'm looking forward to how he guards Domantas Sabonis tomorrow. I don't think it will be a cakewalk, but it for Sabonis, but I think Hartenstein will give him some resistance. So not saying he's going to shut him down, but I think there'll be some resistance because Hartenstein's just done that this season when it comes to like whether it be guarding Anthony Davis, whether it be going against Rudy Gobert, you name any center out there, he's stepped up to the task and done his job. The last thing I'll say for this, and then we can wrap up the show, is that I want to get into our X factors because tomorrow, we could talk about who's going to like how each team's going to shoot, how each team's going to defend, this, that, and the third. But for me, it also comes down to like certain players who can really tilt this game. And you actually talked about a guy who's a Sacramento King, who's my X factor for tomorrow, and that is none other than Dante DiVincenzo.
Mm.
So I think he's the X factor in tomorrow's game just because of the 3-point shooting, being that second scoring option for this Knicks team since Julius Randle has gone down. He's done an admirable job so far. Dante has just been shooting whites out since the OG Anunoby trade. And then once Randall's gone down, like he's been put up either 20 to 30 points when needed, when called upon. These last couple of games, he hasn't been shooting that well. But I feel like there is an opportunity in this game for a revenge game. And especially when you talked about how he feels about the Sacramento Kings organization. I feel like this is a time for him to really show up and go off tomorrow and really knock down some threes at a high level.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know just I was part of the whole like watching the situation unfold here in Sacramento. It was very strange what happened. Dante is a guy the Kings had traded for once before, and the trade fell through. And then they finally were able to get their hands on him. And the first thing you thought they would do is pair him with De'Aaron Fox and put him in the backcourt. And then they just didn't do it, and he got frustrated by the fact that he had a 25 game audition to show what he could do, and he was a free agent during the summer, and the Kings sort of limited what he could do in the final stretch, bringing him off the bench. It was not a amicable breakup. Not only that, but the Kings refused to extend a qualifying offer, which was a shock. So that was absolutely stunning when that actually came down. I believe I broke that story that he was not getting his qualifying offer from the Sacramento Kings, which again, his qualifying offer wasn't even that high. And he was sort of a guy who most people thought would get around mid-level exception money.
Mm.
And then he had to go and sort of reboot his career with the Golden State Warriors, had a great season last year in Golden State. But just the way that it happened, the way that they chased him for so long, and then once they got him, they didn't hold on to him. And then that offseason, they went out and traded for Herter and signed Malik Monk, and sort of the rest is history from the Kings angle. But for Dante, it was just a weird situation and not one that I've seen all that many times. And so I hope it looks like it's all worked out for him in the wash, but he's a guy who I think will have a chip on his shoulder against the Kings. Whether he can harness that or not is another question, because he is a guy who, while he's quiet, he plays with a lot of emotion, and you could see him being a little amped up and maybe a little tight against a team that they probably shouldn't be. He probably should just come in and launch his threes like what he's done recently, and he should have a pretty good game.
Yeah, and you saw that he can get, he wears his heart on his sleeve depending on the matchup,
Yeah.
like how he had with Kelly Oubre and the tackle and just feeling a certain way. And look, rightfully so in that matchup. So who's your X factor for tomorrow's game? If mine is Dante DiVincenzo, who you think for the Kings needs to be that guy?
Yeah, we just while we were sitting here, while I was looking down, I was tweeting out Trey Lyles is sprained his MCL and is going to miss 2 weeks at a
Mm.
minimum. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, and that just puts a whole lot more pressure on Malik Monk as the guy off the bench. to provide scoring. I'm going to say that he's one of my X factors, but I'm going to say like no one's heard of this kid out there, I'm sure, but Keon Ellis and his defense, if he
Hmm.
gets either a start or if he plays major minutes, when he plays 14 minutes or more, the Kings are 14. I think they're 12-4 on the season. When he starts, they're 6-0. Of course, that's over like 65, 66 games. That's not like he hasn't started 6 games in a row, but he has started the last two and shut down Damian Lillard, shut down D'Angelo Russell completely. And so I would say that there's a good shot you're going to see him against Brunson for long stretches during the game. And he's also a really good, sneaky 3-point shooter. So he could be a big time X factor. So between Monk needing to, bring it off the bench and score a bunch without Lyles there, and of course Keon, I think you got a couple of pretty cool X factors.
There you go. And there you have it, Knicks Nation. That's the game of the week preview for tomorrow. Shout out to my guy James Hanford coming through and helping me preview this game. James, please let the listeners know where they can find you if you got any work up and coming.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at thekingsbeat.com. That's my newsletter slash website. I'm on ESPN 1320. You can find us on YouTube. I have a show called The Insiders Monday through Friday from 10 to noon. And I make a lot of other appearances on ESPN 1320 in Sacramento. And then on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at James_Ham, HAMNBA. You can find me on the Twitter box.
Awesome. James, once again, thank you so much for joining me today and previewing this matchup between the Knicks and the Kings tomorrow. They'll be playing, if you're tuning in if you're tuning in tomorrow, it'll be 10 p.m. at night Eastern time, unlike James, who'll be starting at 8 p.m. normal time for you. You know, you get to go to
7.
bed at a normal 7. That's right. 7. What
Oh
am I
yeah.
talking about? 7. You get to watch this game at a normal time, go to bed at a normal time. For all of us out here, have to stay up 10 p.m. on Saturday night, probably take a nap in between, or not in between, but before the game starts, like I'll be doing. That's what you should be doing. All right.
Pre-game
So
nap.
make sure,
Pre-game nap.
yeah, pregame nap all the time. I did that yesterday before the Trailblazers game. But thank you, James, yet again. And thank you, Knicks Nation, for tuning in. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure to share the links to all these videos too. And make sure to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a family member to tell their pets and whoever to support the channel. We need that. We need that support. Also, make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit, and also support our other platforms. We got knicksfantv.com. Make sure to support the website and support the writers out there, and make sure to catch all the other content that we got on the channel too. But most importantly, make sure to catch tomorrow because we will be going live after the Knicks play the Kings. So shout out to Knicks Nation, shout out to all the franchise channel members, salute to all the mods. We appreciate all of you. I see you, Flizzy Flex, John Talento, Nostalgic Nick. I see all of you in here. Demario Montag, I see you as well. I see CP making eye emojis for the Burks conversation. Appreciate you, all of you. Thank you once again. We'll catch you later. We out.